Carmiece and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an asset that we need to deal with. Welcome to the Coffee with Carmiece, Wednesdays at 11. I know I haven't been as consistent as I have promised, but I promise you I will make up for it. We have been busy throughout the summer. We've been in court. We've been in trial. So obviously sometimes the court don't respect our little time that I've set aside for you and I to chat and catch up, but I got to put the clients first. So forgive me, but today I'm going to be answering a question about marital property, who gets the house. It keeps coming up, so I'm being current. I want to stay in tune with what's actually happening with my clients, the key questions that I'm getting. So maybe if I put it out there for you, you can have some more information to work on this exit strategy. So let me back up and introduce myself, because I did cut the intro a little short because time is money and we're all so busy. So I'm attorney Carmiece Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area along with bankruptcy. That's been on the uptick as well. So I'm going to do a couple of videos to get some information out about that. But today it's all about your exit strategy and what are you going to do with the marital home, who's going to get it, who gets to stay, who has to leave, and all of those big questions that really impact. And usually a lot of times when I'm hearing, it's the biggest barrier to you moving forward. Okay. So I practice family law. I do a lot of divorce. So people might want to know, what do you think about marriage? Do you think it's a good institution? Do you think it's worth the trouble? You're seeing all these people get divorced all the time. I'm going to tell you, I am a hopeless romantic. I absolutely believe in the institution of marriage. I think what I've learned over my 12 years of practice in family law in particular, I've been an attorney since 2005, is it really requires people to know themselves quite well. You really had to have lined that up, had a culture of teaching you what marriage is, not what the fantasy version of it is, what the reality version of it's going to be, and cultured you and prepared you, and really that you knew who you were and what you needed to bring to the table and what you wanted, in terms of a spouse. And a lot of times we get into these marriages and you find out, oh, I didn't know enough. And people, a lot of times, for no ill fact of anybody involved, after 20 years, after 30 years, people have evolved into different people that no longer line up and no longer, share the same values anymore. And this is after kids. And sometimes people just think, we're supposed to ride off into the sunset with this no matter what. And honestly, I'll tell you, people get in the late 50s, especially now with COVID, people are making decisions about how to spend their time, how to be happy, and how to, enjoy life as best as they can. Hold on 1 second. I got to do one thing here with this, trying to keep up with StreamYard and Facebook and interfacing and all that. So let me make sure this is muted. Okay. So what we're answering today for you is this marital home question. So I get it a lot. This is the question folks want to know, especially during COVID, especially during the pandemic, especially during the shutdown. Can me and my spouse get a divorce while we're still cohabitating, living together in the house? So I did a formal video on this. There's going to be more to come on this. There's a lot of questions about this all the time. So let's just get into it. Let's unpack it really quickly and get down to the nuts and bolts, because the purpose of this show is to kind of just have that information, out there. I know you're doing your Google search, but you can't do the legal analysis. And that's what a consultation is for. That's what you pay for with a consultation, is for me to sit down with you and go through your case, in particularly with my experience and understanding of the law, having done this hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of times by now, what the likely outcome is. So let's get into this question about the house. So there's a couple phases you have to deal with. You have to deal with who has the house during the separation. So there's, well, no, let me answer the question. The first question is, can you get a divorce and you guys still live together and no one leave? Okay. Now, in Maryland, we all know, in a lot of states, we know that usually there is a required period of separation between the parties, right? And what that requires is that someone leaves the house, and in this instance, you want to know, can you avoid that step, right? So this is what you'd have to consider in doing that. So mutual consent divorce in Maryland provides that if you come up with a written agreement with all the outstanding issues resolved in your marriage, you can get a divorce without anybody leaving the home. Okay, that's the short answer to it. Because a lot of people had run into this issue of just not being able to afford to live in two separate dwellings. The money's the same, but now the expenses have doubled and the homes cannot be maintained simultaneously. Or you need money out of the house to make your move. Say you've lived in this house for whatever amount of years during the course of the marriage, and you're thinking, okay, well, we'll sell it, we'll liquidate it, or, there's a lot of things you can do at the house, but for whatever reasons, moving is not on the table for you right now, and you still want to get a divorce. So the quick answer to that is, we're going to need a settlement agreement. We're going to need all the issues resolved. If there's children, we're going to need you to resolve child support, custody. Okay. If there's alimony involved, we're going to need you to waive it or come up with the terms. So all the work has to be done on the front end, pretty much. You have to deliver your divorce to the court wrapped up in a bow for the court. So they say, as long as we don't have to resolve anything, right, for you, and you've done the work and everybody's got an agreement written, signed, notarized, stamped, sealed, and delivered, you can go ahead and file the divorce while cohabitating in the house together. So you can hear what I went through in terms of I left one off, marital property. So again, you have to go through all of the issues and they have to be resolved and they have to be in writing. So this works. So in my experience, living together and getting a divorce is a really narrow line to cross there. You guys have got to be amicable. It has to have come probably, some time has passed. I think there still would have been a cooling off period. Even if you're cohabitating, there's been a reconciliation of the idea. And now you guys are strategizing on how to move forward, preserve relationships, especially if you have kids. You still want to be able to go to the birthdays and the, school events and activities and be civil, loving parents and still, and give that to your kids if kids are involved. So that's the long and short of it. We need amicability. It saves time. It saves money. It saves stress. Okay, so it is the way to go. A lot of people are working through these mutual consent divorces with my help and support when there's assets on the line. Now, I'm going to caveat this and tell you, this is not the time when there's property involved. It's not the time for the DIY settlement agreement. I've seen some of them, what these softwares are cranking out. I've worked with a client recently, and I'll tell you, to be able to draft an agreement, to come up with a software that drafts an agreement that makes it vague enough to fit any situation, right, and be carefully crafted, that's a hard thing to do. Some of it's clunky. It'll get you there. I've looked at it, not the way I would draft it. Sometimes it leaves some ambiguity and vagueness in the agreements, but nonetheless, at least get that reviewed if that's something you want to move forward with. Please do not sign a written agreement with your spouse because you're emotionally suffering and you just want it over with. Make sure if there's assets involved in this divorce that you get a consultation and you make sure, because I cannot tell you the amount of times, and it's a painful discussion, where people were just sick of it. Say the other spouse was a narcissist and you were just done. Like, look, I'm done with this. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to hear it. Sign. Let's just get a divorce and be done. I have a case right now. Let me tell you case in point about a case happening right now, where I get a sense that that's what happened. And as a result, in this agreement, right, the parties had a written agreement. They didn't have any kids. They had property. I think because of some issues in a divorce, other party agreed to alimony, right? And I'm not too sure that this person understood what they were really agreeing to, because one person went and got the agreement written, the other person was in an emotional upheaval. I could tell, because there's no way in this agreement, this person has agreed to indefinite to pay the spouse alimony indefinitely until she remarries or dies. And this woman is like 40 something. That's 40 years. That is 40 years of payments indefinitely. And the agreement says it's non-modifiable. Now, that person really needed to spend a few $100s to get a consultation to make sure someone walked through this agreement, the fine print. It's not fine to me. It's usually 12 point Times New Roman, but it still seems like fine print to you because you don't understand what it's saying. It just sounds like blah, 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 blah. You sound like, okay, I'm going to give you some money for a little bit of time. And he was thinking in this instance, I'm going to pay her till I feel like it. Well, what's going on in the scenarios now, usually what happens, there's a new relationship. There's a new sheriff in town, and homegirl want to account for these dollars and want to know, where is this check going? No, that's over. But that's not going to be how this is going to go. So I'm telling you guys, mutual consent divorce is the way to go in terms of getting an uncontested divorce. Really, spending a few minutes before the magistrate, answering very basic questions, not having all your business on public record, because you do not want to be in the case where you got to kind of spill all the beans on a public record. The courts, you don't get it exclusively. There's other folks there. There's other cases to be heard, and everybody be tuned in like, what happened? You don't want that. You don't need it. Even if your case starts off contested, there's good news. Even if it starts off and you're like, look, ain't no way, based on who I'm dealing with, this is a whole nother level crazy. I can't get an agreement on anything. There's still hope. Even if the case starts off contested, there's a lot of opportunity along the way for the case to be settled. So oftentimes, but I'll tell you, I get a question, another one I get all the time. How much is the divorce going to take? How much is it going to cost? And how long is it going to take? And that really depends on how long are we working on this case? How long does it take? When do we jump off? You know what I mean? Do we not even get on and get the agreement signed before we file? Do we have to file and ride it along for a couple of months till we get to a settlement conference, till we get to a mediation, till we get to the steps of the courthouse? How long did we have to ride this train before we jumped off? And that is the bill ticking along, because I'm riding with you and I'm making sure that, I can deliver on our legal strategy. Okay. And that's what it's all about. People also want to know, how many cases have you won? Well, I tell you this, winning and losing in this area of law really is about, did you analyze the facts as best you could based on one side of the story when you start? Did you come up with a legal strategy that you were able to deliver on? So I can say, hey, based on the facts that already exist that I cannot change, I'll make facts and work with you and strategize where I can. But to the extent facts already exist, I got to roll with that. But based on, how long you've been married, just what are the facts of the case, we can come up with a pretty clear picture of how this should go. And then you tell me, based on what you know about your spouse, how amicable this is going to be. How mad is the spouse? How despondent? How non-responsive? Because non-responsive cases cause us to do a lot of work on your behalf because we just don't have the cooperation of the other party. So there's a lot of factors. And hopefully I've answered that question for you unequivocally, that in Maryland, and one of the things people still are doing, even when you get that written agreement, you do not have to wait the year. Okay, so you don't have to move out. Even if you have moved out, once you guys have come up with a settlement agreement that is finalized and signed and notarized by all the parties, with the intent of you guys getting married, you can move forward with your divorce. So I know this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's specific questions that relate to your case that have not been addressed here, but it's time for me to run the banner. You guys know how to reach me. All my information is scrolling below, but it's also noted below in the description. And I hope you had a wonderful summer. I can't believe it's over. I mean, now I'm going to be saying, I can't believe it's the holidays. So time's moving fast, guys. Hopefully you're doing what you need to be doing. I know for me, the summer's been I tried to keep it active because I realized I was putting on my, little COVID, 15 pounds here and again. So I had to run that back, get active. So I've been dancing. Firm has been growing. So it's been a good summer. It's been a good summer. Still a socially distant summer to my surprise. I'm still shocked that we're still dealing with the pandemic, but I'm still being safe. Still got, my mask close and my hand sanitizer handy. So we're keeping those protocols diligent. And if you guys need me, you know how to reach me. And I hope that you are doing well. And I'll check in with you next week. I'm going to be in trial. So actually there at week after I'll be back and I'm going to share a video. I took some testimony from my client after divorce. We're going to talk about life after divorce to see what that feels like when you actually cross that finish line and we have fulfilled our promise of freedom from a toxic relationship. So take care and I'll talk to you guys soon.
I'm Carmiece Graves and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an asset that we need to deal with. Sunset, they just abandoned me and come back. They've been gone. They've been gone. They've been gone. They ain't seen nobody, so I guess it's over. Like this, man, you just can't leave. Not true. Okay, that's what they call me. Are there people throughout history that despite whatever circumstances, they did what they wanted to do?